All right, Reb Simcha, can you hear my voice?
I can hear your voice.
Yofi Tofi. So I am very proud to introduce our final speaker of the evening, Dr. Rabbi Simcha Paull Raphael, who is the founding director of the Da'at Institute for Deaf Awareness Advocacy and Training. He has served as adjunct faculty in religion at LaSalle University and Temple University, works as a psychotherapist and spiritual director in Philadelphia, and is on the faculty of the New York Open Center Art of Dying Institute. Ordained as a rabbinic pastor by Reb Zalman Schachter Shlomi, he has written extensively on death and afterlife in the Jewish tradition, and is author of the groundbreaking Jewish views of the afterlife. He has incredible depth and breadth of knowledge to share with us tonight, and we are so lucky to have him join us. And I just want to also say that I feel very wonderful. It's wonderful to have Reb Simcha here because he also provided me shelter for 2 years of rabbinical school. So he's a very special person to me. All right. I leave it to you.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to thank Rabbi Linda Joseph and Rabbi Michael Hess-Weber for the invitation to be here, and Saul Levinson and family for co-sponsoring this. And I know there's some other co-sponsors, but I also want to thank all of you for being here. You've been sitting since 2 o'clock talking about dying and death, and you didn't run away, and I get to be I get to be the cherry on the cake on a day of death education. So I am very, very honored and excited to be able to do that. Listen, we'll try to figure out a way where I can hear some of your comments or questions throughout the presentation. So we'll wing it, and we'll see how that's going to work. So let me start by being on the right page. That always helps. Okay, so here's what we're doing today. We're talking about Jewish views of the afterlife, contemporary perspectives. We want to do not only the what does Judaism have to say about life after death, but also the so what. So I want to tell you a story that goes like this. I used to be young and foolish. Now I'm just foolish. But in my early 20s, I had a friend, and I'm going to stay on the screen and go off the screen. This is me at 22 in front of the grave of the friend I'm going to talk to you about, and this is the book that I wrote about it. So it was a Saturday evening, and my friend was at my house helping me cook a meal. I was one of these creative Jewish feminist men who was cooking a meal for my date. And he was from an Orthodox family, so he said goodbye to me. You know, we hung out together, and then after Shabbos, he went to see his father, as he always did on Saturday night. And the date turned out okay. The meal was good. We went out after to a club, a cafe in Montreal, at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I remember it very, very well. I walked out onto the streets of Montreal, and I pointed to the full moon, and I said to her, there's something very auspicious about that full moon. I don't know what it is, but there's something very auspicious about that full moon. Took her home, went to sleep, and about 5 o'clock in the morning, the phone rang, and it was another friend telling me the friend I had been with earlier that evening had just been killed in a car accident. And if you would have said to me simply, you're going to spend many years of your life talking to people about life and death and afterlife, I would have said, no, thank you. That wasn't what I had in my plans at 22 years old. But very early on, I felt a sense of his presence. I remember we were at the funeral. The name of the cemetery was called Mount Pleasant Memorial Park. I promise you, there was nothing pleasant about Mount Pleasant Memorial Park, burying a 22-year-old kid in the dead of Canadian winter. But I could feel his presence there. During the Shiva house, a number of us were sitting around saying, hey, didn't it feel like Les was in the room? We kept having these sort of meaningful coincidences. He appeared to me in a dream during that year. So there were these moments where I had some sense of some continuity of connection after death. But when I began to look around in Jewish tradition, there was nothing there. It was almost embarrassing that I could go to Shirley MacLaine and the Tibetan lamas and learn something, but in my own tradition, and I was, I already had a degree in Jewish studies, I had a Hebrew day school education, there was nothing there. So I ended up writing the book I would have wanted to read when I was 22 and my closest friend was killed in a car accident. And so what I'm going to share with you is a distillation of that in the next hour. So I want to, you've already been studying Torah all day, but I want us to make a bracha for Torah study together. And here's how I want to do it. It's traditional to dedicate the merit of our study for the zechut, for the sort of the karmic record of somebody on the other side. So hold in your heart, in your mind, one or two people that you want to say, I'm thinking of you and I want to dedicate our study to. So just take a second, take a deep breath and feel the connection with some of those folks. And join me on 3 and we'll say the bracha together. 1, 2, 3. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Holy One of blessing, majesty of all time and space, thank you for this opportunity to soak in these holy words of Torah, which is an improvisational translation, and we're going in the other direction. Okay, so here's how I want to ask Rabbi Michael Hess Weber, see if you can, I want to hear from people in the room. What did you learn about life after death? I can't teach you anything without knowing what you already have, what you learned. Did anybody have anything? Call it out and she'll repeat it back to me. What did you learn about life after death?
What you know. Yeah, I'm going to go get the microphone.
You got to repeat it back to me.
I've just got the microphone to take around the room as far as I can. Let's see how far it goes.
But I can also repeat. If people shout out, I can repeat.
Anybody got
Shout out,
what do
repeat it.
people
We'll
know? Nothing. That's why they're here. Yes.
All right, the lecture is over. Thank you very much. It's been there's nothing to say. Then how many of you, I can see the back of the room, put up your hand. How many of you learned nothing about life after death in Judaism? And this is a group of self-defined Jews who are willing to educate, or Jews and others who want to learn about Judaism. If I was with my Catholic students, nobody would say that. Did anybody learn anything?
What did you learn?
Call it out. And
So, do you want to come up here and talk, or do you want me to repeat? Hold on. It's happening.
You're gonna have to repeat that.
What I was saying is I had some profound experiences around death. I come from a very spiritual family. Actually, a lot of them were Orthodox. My grandmother, she had a connection to the afterlife. She would predict things that unimaginable.
Wait. 2 things. 1, I can't hear, and 2, I want a very short answer. I don't want a story.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you.
I said I've had a couple of...
What did you learn about Judaism? What did you learn about life after death in Judaism?
Well, I believe there is life after death. I've had some proof and experiences in a Jewish way. My grandmother was Hasidish. And when my mother passed away early in an accident, nobody told my grandparents they were in Israel. They didn't tell them right away. And my mother was always associated with the flower, I forgot which flower, a daffodil. And my grandfather and grandmother sent a New Year's card, because she died right before New Year's. And on it was her favorite flower. And then They were crazy coincidences, but they...
Wait. No, this isn't good. A, I can't hear you, and B, it's too long. I got you learned something, but I don't know what the answer is to my question. So I'm going to ask, I'm going to keep going on because I don't hear you, and I want to really short it out. If I was with you all, I would engage you. I can't see your face. I can't hear you. This is not very good. I'm going to keep going on.
Okay, you couldn't hear it all, Simcha. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So there were so many coincidences that the Hasidic grandparents felt that there were signs from the afterlife, is what.
Okay, thank you. So here's the story. People have experiences, and we don't have easy access to tradition. That's exactly what I was saying about my own experience, that I had experiences of feeling a sense of connection. If you had secular parents, they'd say you were crazy. If you had religious parents, they could at least find it within the rubric of Hasidism. So that reminds me. So you know what? So let's look at what Kabbalah and Hasidism has to say about life after death in Judaism. But before that, this is what a lot of I read that Judaism celebrates life in the living. It dwells on life here rather than on the hereafter, as other religious faiths do. Life is precious, the here and now. Did some of you hear that one? Or Judaism, what lives on are the children and the legacy of good works? So here's what I want to say about this. Judaism believes in life and the living. It's in this world that we make Shabbos. It's in this world that when the time of the Messiah, Mashiach comes, the goal is not to live in a transcendent realm, but to become Mamlechet Kohanim V'Goy Kadosh, to become a kingdom of priests and a holy nation in this world. But that doesn't mean that Jews don't believe in life after death. In the pre-modern world of your great-great-grandparents and mine, in the world of Isaac Bashevis Singer, in the world of the Hasidic masters, there was never any question about it because of scientific materialism. And what's his name? Simcha Freud. After Simcha Freud, nobody wants to talk about afterlife. They say that human beings invented spirits standing by dead bodies. And in the world of the Kabbalistic masters, there was never any question. So we lost touch with the tradition, and what I had to do was go do some archaeological work to reclaim some of the lost parts of the tradition. So we're going to look in a minute at teachings from Kabbalah from 12th century onwards. The Kabbalists were interested in the mysteries of the universe and the mysteries of the soul and what happened to the soul after death. And then we're going to look at some of the teachings from Hasidism. And Hasidism took some of the teachings of Kabbalah and presented it to the masses through storytelling. So if I may, I'm going to tell you a story. Can I tell you a story? I don't know. I don't see what I look like. My narcissistic needs aren't being filled if I can't see myself on your screen, but at least I'm going to see myself here. So this is my favorite afterlife story. Story told of Reb Elimelech of Lezhensk. In his lifetime, Elimelech of Lezhensk had a friend who was a great Torah scholar. And his friend came to him and said, "My time to rapidly leave the world is approaching. Can you do me a favor?" So Elimelech says, "Sure, I'll do you a favor on one condition." What kind of condition do you make with the guy who's dying? He says, "I will tell you what it's like on the other side if you come back and, if you come back and tell me what it's like on the other side, I will take care of your son." Because he says, "Take care of my son, educate him in the ways of the Jewish people, and I'll come back and tell you what it's like on the other side." They shake. It's a gentleman's agreement. Reb Elimelech fulfills his part of the bargain in taking care of the son. He sends the kid to all the great yeshivas, all the cheters. Come time for the bar mitzvah. They had 2 bands at the bar mitzvah. I mean, it was really a classy deal. all the way up to the time of the marriage. Because in this culture, if you're going to educate a young bucher, a young man, you're gonna make a shidduch, an arranged marriage. According to one text, he could choose whatever sex he wanted, whatever gender he wanted to marry. According to another sex, it's a nice Jewish girl. She had been to the orthodontist. She had a master's degree. It was a classy shidduch. Comes the afternoon of the wedding, the groom's family was there, the bride's family is there, and Rebbe Elimelech was nowhere to be seen. Well, this was a problem. The hors d'oeuvres were getting cold, the guests were getting kvetchy. They wait an hour, they wait 2 hours, they wait 3 hours. Finally, he comes to the wedding, he does the wedding, they break the glass, they cry out Mazel Tov, and then he gets up to address the guests. He says, I suppose you were wondering where I was. Let me tell you a story. So Rabbi Elimelech tells the guests the story of the arrangement he had made with the groom's late father, and he said, here I had fulfilled my part of the bargain, and he hadn't fulfilled his. So I figured, you know what? I'll wait. I'll see what he has to say. So that's where I was for 3 hours. I was sitting in my study meditating, and finally I hear Elimelech, is that you? What was it like? He said the following. Now listen closely. He said, the moment of death was absolutely painless. It was like taking hair out of milk. And I could see all the people standing around crying and shrieking. I say, stop, I'm over here, I'm over here. But they couldn't hear me, they couldn't see me. I figured, you know what, they made a mistake, they'll figure it out. I wait. And then I see them preparing my body for burial. And the Chevra Kadisha, I say, stop, you're wasting your time. But again, they couldn't hear me, they couldn't see me. I figured, you know what? They'll bury me and I'll come back and I'll explain it. And I go to the cemetery, I follow the procession, everybody leaves, and then I have this burning desire, I have to get back home. And I start digging out, and it's starting to thunder and lightning, and I'm getting very confused. Maybe I should stay here. I think, no, I have to go. Do I go? Do I stay? Do I go? It's run thunder, lightning. I have to dig out. Do I go? Do I stay? Help! And all of a sudden, I see before my eyes a great, 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 great being of light. And this being of light says, don't you know, you're no longer in the world of confusion. You've entered the universe of truth. And instantly, I could see a panoramic vision of every single mitzvah I ever did in my life, and I'm to stand for judgment. And the word comes down that basically I've been a God-fearing man and tried to serve my Creator, so I don't enter into Gehenna, purgatory. But I could have more fully fulfilled my destiny. I certainly could have paid my synagogue dues on time. I don't enter into the heavenly Garden of Eden. So what's going to happen to me, I ask? So I'm assigned a resting place in between Gehenna and Gan Eden, and there I stay. On one hand, I see the lofty heights of Gan Eden. On the other hand, I see the torments of Gehenna, and my soul is cleansed of further defilements. Now, it says in our tradition that on Shabbat, all souls are released from Gehenna. I entered into Gan Eden for the first time, and it was fantastic. It was blissful. It was sublime. After Shabbos, the messenger from the heavenly tribunal says, come on, you have to go back to your resting place in between Gehenna and Gan Eden. I say, forget it. I like it here. I want to stay here. He says, no, you cannot do that. I said, you know what? You go tell him I studied Torah with Rebbe Elimelech of Lezhensk. So the messenger goes to the heavenly tribunal and comes back and says, it's been determined on how you shall rightfully take your place in Gan Eden eventually. But it was also known that in your lifetime you made a promise to Rebbe Elimelech of Lezhensk, and until you fulfill that promise, you can't rightfully take your place in Gan Eden. So Rebbe Elimelech is at the wedding and he's telling everybody this story. And I said, come on, let's go. Your son is getting married. You have to make a l'chaim. He said, where I'm going is so sublime and blissful, I can't wait a second any longer. So you go to the wedding and you make a l'chaim on my behalf. And you ask everybody there to tell everybody they know the story and to make a l'chaim on my behalf. And to tell everyone they know the story and to make a l'chaim on my behalf. So I want to say l'chaim, 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 and I share with you that story exactly as I first heard it. So in that story, is what Joseph Campbell would call the deeper myth of the journey of consciousness. If you want to know anything about afterlife in Judaism, it's not a location. It's a state of consciousness. While we're alive, we are an amalgam of body, emotion, mind, and spirit. This is sort of the Kabbalistic view of the human being. A human being is a biopsychocosmic continuum. There, put that in your pipe and smoke it. We are body, emotion, mind, spirit, and cosmos. Think of it. You know, how are the chairs? How's the emotional vibe there? How's your learning? What's your sense? Spirit is where we connect to the all. Okay, so in the way we think about life after death is determined by what we think about what it means to be human, to be alive. So in the medical model, okay, in the medical model, dead is dead, right? Consciousness is an epiphenomenon of the brain produced by by firing of the synapses. If you subscribe to that model, I'm not going to sell you belief. You have to check my website. You can buy my book, but I'm not going to sell you belief. But this was the worldview of most of the 20th century that affected and infected our Judaism. In the traditional Christian view, there's original sin and there's a possibility of penitence, and you can go up and you can go down, right? So if you go down, you know what it looks like. It's burning, it's fire. If you go up, what happens when you go up? There's clouds, which is because they let you smoke at the bar. Okay, so that's right. So according to Kabbalah, consciousness is a journey, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to look at the journey of the afterlife. My charts go from the bottom on up. The journey of the soul after death is a 4-stage journey based on my Kabbalistic study and many years of reading about life after death. So the first part is physical separation, and this is the map. We're going to go over all this, called Chibuta Kever, the pangs of the grave. I think of it as the winnowing of the grave. It's leaving go of attachments to the body. Corresponds with the Shiva. The next part is emotional purgation. Corresponds with Gehenna. Cleaning out the schmutz under the rug. It corresponds with Kaddish. Then you enter the heavenly Garden of Eden, and then there's a reunion with God. And I'll do that. I'm going to do so. This is a place where if anybody has a comment or a question that we can do, let's see how it's working. It didn't work so well last time, but I wonder, and that's where I'm going now. I'm going to do some texts. I'm going to refer back to the story, and we're going to refer to this chart, and we're going to look at Jewish death rituals. Anybody have a comment or a question?
Any comments or questions? And can you come up and speak directly into the microphone so Simcha can hear you? Or I can repeat the question. That's possible too. Any questions at this point? Just, you want to come up and try the microphone? Yeah, might as well. Okay. You've got to speak with it very close to your mouth.
Where are the angels in all of this? Don't Jews have angels? And
okay.
how was the afterlife considered when apparently, or I was told, that there was very little discussion of afterlife for many years among Jewish scholars?
So you're about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 slides ahead of me. But I'm going to bring in the angels. I promise you. Okay? Let's do, here's a first text. I guess I have to be my reader on the text tonight. So let's go back to my chart. What we're going to do now, Chibut HaKever. This is one of my favorite texts. Rabbi Yehuda said, for 7 days, the soul goes to and fro from the house to the grave, from the grave to the house, mourning for the body. And they never taught you that in Hebrew school. But just think of it. For 7 days, there seems to be some kind of intermezzo phase where the soul, or actually for the Kabbalists in the house, it's the nefesh aspect of the soul, stays close to the familiar, to where the person lived, their home, and to their physicality, to their body. Mourning for the body is interesting because I think some people may be mourning for the body, some people may be more ready to go. But the meta message in that text is that there's some intermezzo phase immediately after death. And what does the 7 days correspond with? The Shiva. The Shiva. So Shiva is a kind of soul guiding ritual that helps to send the soul on its journey. Somebody drew this drawing based on that text. Here's the Shiva house and here's the cemetery. What do we do at the end of the Shiva? Yeah, I know we go on a diet, but that wasn't what I mean. What do we do ritually at the end of the Shiva? We walk around the block. Why do we walk around the block? On one hand, it's a psychological act. We are now going back into daily life. We've taken this time out of time, and now we're going back into the world. But on the other hand, it's as if to say to the neshama, to the soul, we're going to walk you this far, and now you have to go the rest of the way on your own. And so when my friend Leslie, alav shalom, died, we felt his presence in the house. And people have these unbelievable stories. It's the third day of Shiva. Uncle Lou just left, so no more sexist humor, thank God. You couldn't have another cold cut if they gave it to you intravenously. You just couldn't. And the two sisters are sitting around saying, didn't it feel like Daddy was in the house? And people have that experience, and we haven't had a Jewish framework to understand our experience. But for 7 days, the soul sticks around. So that's a very important piece about the teachings on life after death. That part of the journey is a journey where the soul needs to complete its business and move on. Any comments? Rabbi Michael, do you hear any comments in the room you want to deliver?
So with everyone travels so much for, because we live all over the place. So often some of the shivas that I've been at don't last 7 days. So is there something magical about the 7 days, or is it once everyone has departed the house that's when the soul knows to go back?
Well, I think like with all due respect to the Reformed tradition, 3 days of Shiva is an oxymoron because Shiva means 7. And my own sense is it's none of this is fixed. This is like an ideal model, but I think there seems to be a kind of gradual transformation for the mourner that has some parallel process for the soul. So I tell people, look, if you can't say Kaddish every day, find a Kaddish moment. If you can't sit Shiva for 7 days, make sure you give yourself a Shiva hour. just on your own. So we know that the grief journey takes time to allow the impact of death to come in. It may be that it takes a while for the soul to let the impact come in. So I wouldn't want to legislate it. I want to see it more in a mythic sense as some kind of process of transformation. So part of this early stage of the journey, there are a number of other, what I call visionary phenomena. So here's another text also in this early stage. Rabbi Shimon said, "Have you seen today the image of your father or your mother? For so we have learned that the hour of a person's departure from the world, their father or mother and other relatives gather round, and they see them and recognize them, and likewise all with whom they had associated in this world, and they accompany their soul to the place where it is to abide." I'm going to go off screen for a second, so I want to read it again. This is a teaching from Zohar. "Have you seen today the image of your father or your mother? At an hour of a person's departure from the world, their father or mother and other relatives gather round. They see them and recognize them, and likewise all with whom they associated in this world, and they accompany their soul to the place where it is to abide." So what it says is that in the deathing process, we are visited by familiar loved ones to escort us on the journey. And this is 100% correlated with the near-death experience literature, where people are pronounced clinically dead and later resuscitated. And I mean, when I worked in hospice 35 years ago, some guy said, my brother, he ran out of bed. They put him back in bed and they strapped him down and gave him Thorazine. Today, the nurses are much more cognizant of these kind of experiences. And so there's more resuscitation technology available today than at any other point in human history. All right. Every major hospital has resuscitation technology, and the state of the art, they create ice rooms. They've been able to keep people after they code, they keep them on ice for up to an hour and they come back. There's a guy by the name of Parna, his last name, I think it's Samuel Parna, who wrote a book called Erasing Death, and he talked about some of the ice rooms. But how did the rabbis of the Zohar in the 12th century Guadalajara, Spain know that? I don't know, but they understood the invisible worlds. And our science is very good at being able to determine our sodium levels and our pulse ox levels, but our medical technology isn't yet observing and recording the state of consciousness leaving the body. But that's what we're talking about. We're talking about Science 2.0 that really understands deathing not only as a physiological process, but also as a psycho-spiritual process. And any of you, if we were in the same room together, I'd ask you who's working in hospice and who's been working as a chaplain, because folks who are doing death work, or if you've attended to death straight in front of your face, you see these kinds of things happening. And what I'm here to tell you is that's hardwired into Jewish tradition. That's part of the lost legacy. That was part of the spiritual archaeology work I had to do in reclaiming or rediscovering the lost Jewish traditions of life after death.
Can you speak just for a moment on this, why you use the word deathing instead of the word dying?
Deathing is an active. Dying is what the patient does, but deathing is what we do to help people. It's sort of like birthing, right? So we're really, there are people training as death doulas. There's the deathing process is accompanying people through dying. Yeah, and I think we're really, You know, in 1900, Simcha Freud wrote the interpretation of dreams, and that begins the transformation of cultural attitudes towards human sexuality. And we're 122 years later, and we still got issues, right? But we've come a long way. In 1969, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote on death and dying, and that begins cultural transformation of attitudes towards death and dying. We're still in the very early phases of transforming our whole cultural understanding of death. The next generation, between medical aid in dying and psychedelics on the deathbed and green burial and Chevra Kaddish and taking 6 hours in a synagogue setting and learning about Jewish death traditions, that's not your parents' Judaism. That's not your grandparents' Judaism. So we're really both witnessing and creating the next stages of death and of death in our culture. Okay, here's the one about angels. Okay, so there are two kinds of visionary phenomena at the deathbed. There's the mummy daddy bubby zadie level of seeing somebody you know, and then there's the mythic guides. So let me move this. No person dies before seeing the Shekhinah. And because of its deep yearning for the Shekhinah, the soul departs in order to see her. And with the Shekhinah, there come 3 ministering angels to receive the soul of the righteous. So there's a lot more on angels in Jewish tradition. But here is a text, again, from the 12th century Guadalajara, Spain, saying that on the deathbed, there are accompanying angels to help the consciousness separate from the body. When one departs this world, they see many strange things on their way and meet Adam, the first human, sitting at the gates of Gan Eden to welcome all who observe the commands of their master. So the Shekhinah, modern Jewish feminism notwithstanding, the Shekhinah is not a woman with tallis and Birkenstocks, though you could see that on www.shekhinah.com, my wife's website. But in rabbinic literature, the Shekhinah is this luminescent, embodied presence of the divine. So there seems to be helpers. That's what these two texts said. When one dies, somebody said, "Oh, what happened to my father? He's all alone." I said, "No, don't worry. There's help on the other side." So who do you imagine being there for you? And we don't have a good iconography we don't have a very extensive religious iconography of figures, so like you can, if I said Jesus accompanies people through the deathbed, we know we have pictures from Christian Renaissance art, or not so much in Islam, but the Hindus see Krishna and the Buddhists see the Buddha, and the Muslims see Gabriel or Muhammad, and the Jews see someone from the Federation shows up, folks. We don't have an indigenous visual imagery, but I have to tell you that this story blew me away. My uncle, my great uncle, he was of the vintage that ran away from the Tsar's army after World War I. And he came to this country and he made his fortune working hard, like many an immigrant of his generation. And he was rabidly anti-religious. And then, one day I was sitting with him and he said, "I nearly died, and the Rabban Gamliel came and said, 'Yoine, it's not your time.'" His name was Uncle Yonis. We called him Uncle John, Yoinele, they called him. And who shows up for him but Rabbi Gamliel? Rabban Gamliel came and said, "Yoine, it's not your time." Rabban Gamliel, from his youth in a Talmudic yeshiva in Eastern Europe. And now this was not a guy who read Raymond Moody, Life After Life. This was not a guy who would have seen Defending Your Life or Heaven Can Wait or any of those early near-death experience movies. This was a guy who was, maybe read a newspaper, maybe. But it says to me that there seems to be the guides that get painted in a different cultural nuances. Again, I can't say I fully understand this since the last time I died, but I'm just telling you my reading of the texts. So, so for him, the visionary guide was Rabbi Gamliel. Today, in near-death experience literature, when children have near-death experience, who shows up for them? Yoda, because Yoda was sort of multi-dimensional being. So I don't know exactly how it works, but I think the take home on this is to be able to accompany people who are dying and to be able to say to them, you're not going to be alone. We're going to be with you till your time comes, and you'll be greeted by loved ones on the other side. At least that's my reading of the Jewish sources. You still with me? Because I have to get you in and out of Gehenna before my time runs out. So I got to do this a little bit more quickly now. So here, because I'll never get invited back here if I leave you in Gehenna. This is when God desires to take back a person's spirit, all the days they lived in this world pass in review. So this is the life review. So we have that in our language. I saw my life flash before my eyes. We had it in the story where Rabban Gamliel sees all of those visionary phenomena of every single mitzvah he ever done. And people, I've worked in a hospice, and it seems to be that when people are dying, the black box recorder may go on auto replay before they die. It's like Mrs. Schwartz is hallucinating. Mrs. Schwartz is not hallucinating. She's reviewing your life. So make sure you get a chance to review your life and write your ethical will and sign your living will and tell your story to your loved ones, because that's the work of preparing for the final departure. Okay, so then this ends. Eventually for the Kabbalists in the house, eventually the nefesh dissipates. And then there's another part of the journey we call Gehenna. Now, Gehenna goes like this. Say your friend Joe comes up to you and smacks you in the face and kicks you in the shins, and I come up to you and you're just so furious. And 6 months later, I come up to you and say, whatever happened to your friend Joe? And you say, Joe, did I ever tell you what happened? I could kill a guy. What's my point? Emotions persist long after the initial point of contact. And we human beings are very good at repressing emotion. It's one of the things that we're good at. So you can have a fight with your significant other or with someone else, and you wake up the next morning and you've got a pain in the neck. Your neck hurts because there's a pain in the neck, or your back hurts because you don't feel supported, or you get nauseous because you can't stomach it anymore. Or Louise Hay, who does mind-body healing, says you get a bladder infection because you're pissed off, right? What's the point? It may be that in life, there's a lot that we can shove under the rug, and in death, there's a certain amount of unresolved psycho-emotional karma, if you will, psycho-emotional stuff that you need to process. So that's my understanding of what Gehenna is. Gehenna is described in religious literature. Gehenna is described in terms of torment, but I've been trying to understand it in a psychological sense. It's not literal. My son went to school at Bloomington, at Indiana University in Bloomington, and when I would drive from Bloomington to Indianapolis, there was a sign that said, "Avoid hell, repent." And I always had to check my GPS to make sure I didn't go the wrong turn. The fundamentalists want you to believe